This is Aaron Levine, LG Insurance Agency, with my good friend Matthew Cohen from Two Rivers Title and Escrow. Matt is back. Matt was one of the first, we'll go first 10 guests on the And Insurance podcast, the prior iteration of what we're doing right now. And I'm pumped to have you back on for a follow-up conversation, which started casually. And I'm like, we got to get this whole thing on camera because everything is crazy. People are trying to steal land. People are trying to steal money. And the barrage on you, on your industry, doesn't end. It keeps getting worse.
Oh, no. Well, thank you for having me back.
Of course.
I am actually looking forward to this. It's been a while. But yeah, we're on the firing line. We handle the documents and money. I have every day for dozens of people, we receive all of their information that a criminal wants to steal their identity. I mean, we have the dates of birth, the social security numbers, their credit card information, where they live, where they're moving to, who they work for, everything. So it's a constant attempt to trick either me or somebody else in my company to send the documents, the information, or just one little piece of information necessary for them to inject themselves in the process. And,
so what did this theft game look like 20 years ago in the title space, in real estate? Like, what did it look like then?
Then it was people who were committing loan fraud. There was people, I mean, the theft was from social buyers or people who were refinancing. You've heard of liar's loan, that people who blame the Great Recession on liar's loans, and they're like, it's people passing off somebody else as their spouse, or giving a bad check because you didn't have that instant verification. We couldn't tell that there was a bad check. The banks are very, very good on that. I remember when I was a young lawyer, and I first started doing real estate as part of my practice, one of the senior partners at the firm I was working at said, and by the way, you always have to make sure that the person on the other side of the table is really who they say they are. Yeah, I'll check get driver's license. I go, people have fake driver's licenses. So there's certain rules. And one rule that I can remember was that if they've been married for 20 years, and they're playing footsie under the table, somebody's not who they say they are.
Oh.
And sure enough, within 6 months of that, I had
under the table.
I had a simple refinance, and the people were like giggly. And again, this was a couple in their 50s. At the time, I thought that was old. Now I don't. And I did a quick glance under the table, and sure enough, they had their shoes off, and I hadn't started signing yet. And I said, listen, I do need a second form of ID. They said, oh, sure. And they got it from the table. They both went down to the car, and they didn't come back up.
Oh.
So that was it. We didn't have this this wholesale identity impersonation. Because now with technology and being involved in every step, there's so many weak links in the chain. You have people are texting, people are putting things on social media, emailing documents. It's very simple. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had this one again for the 100th time. I got an email, and it was, I just want to confirm the time for the closing and the date for the closing, that nothing has changed. And this was the purchaser. And the real estate paralegal was copied on it. I was in my office. I was copied on it. Other people involved in the closing. But when I look closely at it, I wasn't, maybe I should, sorry, I thought I put that on silent. I went into the system to check the email address. There's something just didn't seem right, that he was confirming the time and date. Usually those are by phone calls. And there's an extra letter in the person's name. That typical thing. Now, why do they just want to confirm a date and time? Because once I confirm a date and time, they have my real email in their chain. Now they're calling up somebody else involved or emailing somebody else pretending to be the buyer, or now pretending to be someone else, maybe somebody from the lender, and saying, I know the closing is confirmed for. Again, they build legitimacy step by step. They're looking for one additional piece of information to convince the next person in the deal that they're real.
So you're now a trained cybersecurity expert, right? You're looking for that letter. They're not expecting you or anybody else opening that email to find something so small, because we all look quickly and move right along like we're at the eye doctor and we can read the line of letters.
They can, you look for that, but sometimes the emails are real. Sometimes it's real, and often it is. Usually, the most common type of fraud we have now is fake wiring instructions. Now, it's coming from the attorney's office, or it's coming from the seller if they're getting it themselves. It's really coming from their account, except it was intercepted, and they used Photoshop or something else, and they altered the routing information. So we have to call. Everything is verbally confirmed. We make so many, 10 years ago, calls we never would have made. Just want to confirm, yes, I sent it to you. Okay, now I need to read it back to you. I just told you, I sent it to you. That's okay. We want it. We want it, and we go through it digit by digit.
And you're not calling the phone number that they put in their signature on that email. You're calling the phone number from the original file.
Yes, and now if it's a different phone number or it's from a bank, we can't find it. It's always about going online.
Right.
And you have to look to see what phone number they have. The criminals will try to get a very similar phone number so you don't notice if something's transposed.
Right.
We've had that several times. And it's a process. You have to verify everything. And we tell our clients, whether it's the attorney, the realtor, the loan officer, or the buyer or seller, we're telling, and call us.
Right. So let's go back to basics, right? So what Two Rivers Title does, what your company's main function is managing the closing and the settlement for real estate transactions.
Yeah.
There's a buyer, there's a seller, there's a buyer's attorney, a seller's attorney, a title agent, and a bank involved. You have 6 parties.
Oh, there's more than that.
Oh, we're going to keep it simple. There's 6 simple parties for this transaction, 6 different email domains and addresses, and people to coordinate to get this work done. So it seems pretty easy to infiltrate the system and steal money.
And then you have the realtors, and then you have the paralegals, and the assistants, and the transaction coordinators. So we're usually dealing with 15 or 20 people. So it boils down to does it make sense?
Right.
Every little step. Why is this person calling me now?
Right.
Not that they shouldn't be calling you. Why are they asking me for that information? It's really just comes with time that anything out of the normal pattern, anything deviates even tiniest bit, ask the question, double check. It takes a lot of time. I mean, I have to say at least a third of the time of the company is spent verifying information and preventing fraud. Yes, we're a title agency. We look at the land records. We see what's needed to be done to do the transaction, who is qualified to sign the deed, what restrictions exist, what easements exist. That was what we did.
That's all that you used to do, and that's the boring stuff, right? Unless you're trying to steal, sell somebody's land that they don't actually own.
That's another common
those
type
stories
of fraud.
are great, but we don't have enough time for those stories. We want to talk about the cyber, because the cyber piece of it is important for every business owner, for every individual involved in a real estate transaction or any transaction of moving money or having money, right? There's a risk of this cyber threat to your business, to your person, right? We find a lot of individuals aren't insured against these issues. A lot of businesses are not insured against a breach, a shutdown, right? In business interruption if your system goes down. And the one we just spoke about last week, I was away at a conference, is the contingent business interruption, right? So if your main CRM, if your main database or your underwriter goes under and can't close a deal for 2 weeks, right? Who's going to pay your bills because you can't make a closing happen for 2 weeks because somebody else got breached and shut down, right? That contingent loss of money could be covered by an insurance policy as well. There's so many different pieces to it. And, your business having to move into the cybersecurity business is, just beyond me. But I think it's great because you take all those next necessary steps. And I know many title agencies are not taking those next necessary steps. They're still on the hope and pray model, until something happens and they get shut down.
And which is crazy. And I think I have every type of insurance you can have in the cyberspace. As my agent, I think I'm as protected as I can be.
Yes.
But there's
always a gap.
But you're wonder how are they doing this on a hope and a prayer? two of the big four underwriters were shut down at different periods last year. The only reason we didn't have an interruption in our business in those states was because we just shifted those files to the other underwriter. But I won't say their names, but you're talking national companies, some of the biggest corporations in America, couldn't do business in several states at a time for weeks. One of them was shut down for over a month in one state. I mean, the losses that they incurred, the losses I incurred if I was shut down, you know, we're going into the hundreds of thousands of dollars because people can't wait. They're going to have to shift their business to someone else. They're going to have to figure out a way to close that deal. We've avoided that. We have the backups, the redundant, we have the redundant systems, but it's still scary. I know we plan, but it's a constant battle.
So talk about advising, right? So when you start a transaction, what do you do? What does Two Rivers Title do proactively to help the buyers, sellers, and all the parties make sure that we're all on the same page and we're going to follow a specific protocol? Talk about that, because I think that's important for people to hear.
Well, the number one thing is the personal touch. I know your tagline about who you work with matters. Getting to know the clients, picking up the phone, introducing yourself makes it that much harder for them to inject themselves. You're not the person I spoke to the first time. We try to coach them up. I mean, we have the protocols set up.
Right.
We explain what we're doing in terms of, verifying information. We give them warnings not to open it up. If you have any questions about us sending something, please call us first. Here's my number. Here's my direct dial. And I'm going to be working with you at every step in the transaction. So we have 8 of those people, those transaction coordinators, paralegals, settlement officers, whatever. Every location, every state has different terminology for them, so that the buyers and sellers know who they're dealing with on day one. That is really important. And then we explain what information we're going to be collecting, how we handle it, ask them to always call to verify information that they receive from us. And it sounds elementary, but it's
great. In our high-tech world, right, we have to go back to basics. To protect yourself, going back to the most simplest thing of picking up the phone now becomes the most important piece of this high-tech process of doing a transaction. You think today we'd be able to, do a real estate closing in 47 seconds and not have to worry about anything and be done with it because we can automate the entire process, right?
Once you lose that personal touch, you are setting yourself up for somebody intervening, somebody getting in the middle between you and your client. We know almost all the attorneys that we work with, we've templated their accounts so we can wire them their fees. We ask for the information in case it's changed, but we have it templated already. Right. And our system is, we have, I would guess, somewhere between 97 and 99% of all mortgage payoff accounts across the country, we already have templated in our private system. So people try to sell me that as a fraud protection measure, and they ask them how many institutions, and I go, I have twice as many of those institutions. I've had some of them ask me, how much would you charge us to sell us your database? I don't want to be. I say, and a percentage of everybody you sell it to, and then the conversations sort of break down after that. So we're always, again, trying to figure out ways to coach up our clients. I know it doesn't always work because people can now mimic voices. They can mimic individuals' images. So even on a Zoom conference, is the ability to impersonate people, and that technology is getting less and less expensive every year.
So even on the Zoom platform, you have the ability to AI yourself, right, in a very simple manner. And I've done it, and I can type in a message and hit send, and it will talk as if it's me. So you're right. If you get the appropriate recording of somebody, if somebody takes this recording and wants to do a deep fake of Matthew Cohen, right, giving out all the secrets to Two Rivers Title, they probably could.
They could. A company lost 2 years ago. A company lost $26.5 million.
I remember this story.
And this was overseas, and it was a lower level person in a finance department who thought he was on a Zoom conference with his supervisor, the head of finance, and some other people in his department.
Right.
He was the only real person on that Zoom call, and he couldn't tell the difference. These are people he worked with.
Right.
Now that was bigger money, so the criminals were willing to spend the money necessary to pull that off, but they managed to get him to approve a wire for $26.5 billion. But that's every business.
Right.
It's not just title. I mean, it's any company that handles people's personal data. It's any company that handles and make large vendor payments. One of the biggest ones from the West Coast was a fish distributor.
Right.
Millions of dollars paid out to the company.
So invoice manipulation is huge, right? People get invoices all the time, and invoices are sent, again, on that hope and a prayer that they're going to be paid to an inappropriate party.
Yep, that's it. Now, again, in the world of technology, we're basically paperless now. So if I do get shut down, that the business interruption insurance is so critical,
right?
Because I'm done. I don't have paper files. We don't have 400 file folders sticking in cabinets with all the paperwork necessary to complete a deal.
Right.
We're done. Everything is in our systems.
Everybody's done at that point.
Yeah, we're backed up on a continuous basis. Mirror sites. So it would only take us a couple of days, but that's still a critical couple of days.
Right.
And it's also, now you have notifications if you've been hacked. Now, what data did they steal? We have to have that notification insurance, because the cost of notifying the public that they may have stolen your information. And we've all gotten those letters.
Sure.
From the big healthcare companies. Your data may have been compromised.
Home Depot, Marriott, Target.
Right.
So everybody, MGM, $100 million paid out, plus whatever they lost in business interruption.
I have a couple 100,000 people I have to notify if that happens to me. So we now purge data. We're New Jersey, 15-year minimum for me in my industry. Other states, 10 years. So we go through and we purge data from our systems that's more than 15 years old, which hurts my business, because it's nice to look back on records if we're insuring the same property again, or we get asked questions about a deal that took place. But that's just means more notifications, more risk, more people's data that I have that's now at risk.
So, so the more data we have, the more that's potentially at risk. That's all good. So backing it up, very important, right? Having a mirror is great. Being able to get back up and running, I think, is something that business owners don't practice, don't have the ability to do so, right? And know what they're doing to get back up and running. One of the guys that I was with down in Florida recently spoke about his company being shut down. The amount of work that it takes to get back open again, because also, you're bringing in the insurance. If you have the cyber insurance, you're bringing in the forensic team to make sure you're cleaned up. You're bringing in the team to help get restored. If you have to buy new PCs to get back up and running again, all these expenses that layer up so fast, and these cyber attorneys are not inexpensive. That when they need to act, in an emergency fashion, forget about paying any type of ransom or worrying about that. Just to get back up and running is, could cost you nearly six figures on a very low level.
Yeah, it's expensive. And you have your staff. What are you doing with your staff? They're sitting around, and you're paying them. And you have to have a plan in place. How do you if something happens, if your systems are hacked, how do you get up and running? So we've mapped it out. Fortunately, I haven't faced that.
Have you tested it?
Haven't tested it, but but the additional, the different software protections we have. We've had people attempting brute force to break through our passwords.
Brute force.
They use use software which is generating millions of passwords a second.
Right.
So we have the software that shuts down the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and any system, all our systems that we gain all the ways we gain access to our systems have detection software to determine if somebody's trying a high volume approach to getting into the system.
Now, does MFA help you, right? Does MFA, what layer does MFA fit in this, right? As far as protecting your systems?
Well, MFA for everything.
Right.
For the emails, for logging into the software, everything. And so you have to have your phone, you have to have access to your email account. You have to have access to the text messaging. So yeah, we're doing. We have MFA on all our systems. We added it. We keep adding. We're always looking for new ways. It's a cost of doing business now.
Right.
It's a significant cost of doing business.
It's a cost of time and cost of doing business, and totally separate off the total. This is such more of a random question, but at what point does title go into the blockchain, and we get some of that less paper transaction put out there?
It's coming, and we're not a generation away. I wouldn't say we're going to see it here in New Jersey in the next 10 years, but it's coming. County clerks around the country are looking at, or have already started implementing blockchain for land records. It's a question of how far back in time they're going to go with those land records. So there's still going to be that paper component. So, Monmouth County has records online now. Depends on where you are in the county, what type of records, going back into the 70s or to the 90s.
Okay.
But we're searching back into the 19th century,
Right.
or way past the 1970s.
At what point do you stop looking backwards, right? When we're having this chain of title conversation, when do you stop looking down the line?
That's a case by case situation. You can't stop looking backwards.
Right.
We're doing a simple house purchase for one of my employees at my law firm right now, and I had to go back to the 1920s because it's Compton Farms. It's a Monmouth County royalty. It's one of those families that's been around in Monmouth County for 300 years. Mm-hmm. It's been in the family. This hasn't been deeded out since the 1920s.
Okay.
Because it just gets passed along. Somebody in the family moves in.
Right.
They have now we're looking back. We have to go through three generations of surrogates work.
Okay.
The person who owned it in the 20s passed away, and it passed to somebody then people who inherited probably passed away in 50s or 60s.
Right.
Sorry, we all have to go. So the search is going to take a little longer, and they're not going to go back that far.
Right.
And especially in Monmouth County is one of the oldest parts of the state to be populated, Western population. So you have agreements, you have easements that go back to the board of proprietors, the king's grants.
Okay.
And some of those are very important. You also have Indian trails right in these communities, and they're still valid. In Burlington County, there was a big case, and the title underwriters had to pay tens of millions of dollars to extinguish the claims of one of the Indian tribes. The Indian tribes proved that they owned part of the downtown of one of the municipalities in Burlington County. And they fought it for years, and eventually the underwriters realized they were going to lose. So blockchain is going to be a forward-looking process.
Right.
And unless New Jersey passes some type of curative act, which means that this person at this point in time owns the property, and these are all the other people's rights, but we're not going to.
Right.
Sort of like the torrent system, which is now fading out in some of the Western states, where you get a certificate of title from the county or the state. Blockchain will minimize the amount of lookbacks we have to do, but it's going to be a long generations in transition. Title is dirty.
It's too far to go back. It's too far to go back to clean it, to make it clean.
Yeah.
To put it in the blockchain, because if it's not clean going into the blockchain, you've got nothing to rely on.
Yeah.
So
exactly. It was a very long-winded way of me saying that. Sorry.
I have a good habit of being able to simplify things. So what's next? What is Matthew Cohen working on? What is Two Rivers Title working on? I know you have the escrow side of the business because real estate transactions weren't enough. You now do, you help businesses, cement and finalize and close their deals. What are you working on next for you and for Two Rivers Title?
Well, the most interesting that we're doing now is we're straight escrow work that doesn't involve real estate. So traditionally, small S&Ls would have trust departments. The big banks would have trust departments. They did certain things for people. It was customer service. Oh, I need help, or I'm selling my business to this person. Everybody brings in their documents, they bring in their money, and the bank, the lawyers would come in, and the bank would act as the intermediary. Mm-hmm. And once everybody gave instructions, the bank would release act as this independent agent, and they release the documents and they release the money. Almost all the banks have gotten out of that over the last 10 years. Chase was the last one that I'm aware of. That only happened 60 days ago. They started closing down that service unit.
Right.
So they focused on their deposits and loans. That's what they do. That's what they and merchant services.
Right.
So people are buying and selling a business, or sometimes when there's litigation, we act as that third-party agent.
And a lot of the attorneys are not qualified to act as that third-party agent, nor are they insured to
They don't want to do it anymore.
They shouldn't.
They don't want to handle money. We have the processes. We have the fraud detection processes. We have the insurance in place. So one came in yesterday. It's a sale of a dry cleaners in New York City. I took in a $240,000 deposit yesterday. I hold the money. When the parties notify me that the transaction is getting ready to close, they send all the documents to me. The buyer sends everything to me.
Right.
Send them to the seller. Sends a copy to the seller. I'm to hold it in escrow till whatever last minute between the lawyers, whatever else they're doing. I don't have to be privy to everything. And once I get instructions from both sides, okay to release the money and documents, ship out the documents to one side, wire the money to the other side. And now we're doing that a couple of times a week. SBA is starting to refer us because word's getting around. Business brokers are starting to use us. And now litigation firms are starting to use us.
Okay.
Because the people can't agree on, they until all the paperwork is signed, they can't agree. They want the money put up, but they don't want it. They don't want your account.
Right.
And plaintiff doesn't want a defense attorney's account because everybody's afraid of they put it on mine.
Right.
And the rule is, number one rule is, if I get those instructions, once I accept the money in my account, my rules govern.
Right.
And if there's a dispute, you have a certain amount of time. If you don't dispute, I deposit it into court in an interpleader action. Okay. We just did that on something from we gave people like 2 years. They still couldn't resolve it. I said, all right, it's time. I said, I've been holding, and it was only a small amount of money. It was like $40,000.
Right.
I said, please, I can't be answering the posturing emails by everybody every week that decides, you guys file the lawsuit.
Right.
And nobody wanted to file the suit, but there was an anticipation of litigation that they put the money up as a good faith gesture. It was 2020. That was 2023.
Wow.
And I got fed up, basically. But that's one time. And
you also don't want to be you don't want to be in the middle of it because then you become a party to the action.
Right. And I can't be in the middle of it. So we're doing it now for the state, several counties, for environmental cleanup projects, for construction projects in lieu of posting performance bonds, for LSRPs, licensed site remediation professionals. So the last step in environmental cleanup is you cap it. You clean it up to state standards.
Right.
You cap it. Mound of dirt, clay, so there's no water penetration. Keeps whatever's there in place. And now you have to put up money with the state. Either post a bond, put up money with the state, or you can put up with money with a license, an LSRP, a remediation trust fund trustee, which I got myself qualified for. Because that money has to be held basically forever. It's like they assume it's going to be held for 30 years.
Okay.
So either they have to post a bond every year.
Okay.
And they can, or they can just put up the cash with me. The interest accumulates for their benefit, and they pay me a small annual fee. And I confirm with the state every year now. So every January, I'm writing a series of letters to the state.
Right.
We are holding this amount. Here's the accrued interest for the past year. Again, it's just a service for the business community. And it's a growing part. So we're doing the business transactions, environmental cleanups, the LSRP money, the remediation trust fund money, growing part. I think it's going to be, the next year or two, it's going to be about a quarter of our revenue stream.
Wow.
Because nobody else wants to do it. So all this cyber fraud.
Nobody else wants the risk of doing it. But you've set yourself up so well with your processes, your procedures, your protocols, your security measures, which allows you to then thrive in this crazy cyber-ridden liability state that we're in.
Right, exactly. So it's like, why not play to your strengths?
Right.
Now, I started telling you earlier, I did mess up the other day.
I wasn't bringing that up, but now that you open that box.
But it's a good short story because I was expecting a DocuSign document from somebody. I got off the phone with them in a few minutes, said, we're going to be sending it to you shortly. I got a DocuSign link, clicked on it. It started the authentication process. It wanted to log me into Office 365. I put in the password, which would start the MFA to get the app on my phone going. And I got an error message. I was like, I know I put it, but normally I just put it in again. And I realized that I was very careful that time.
Right.
Looked at the top, the bar, and it was a very long thing. It wasn't the normal Microsoft account. IT director walked in. I called him in. Within a minute, he had started the process of shutting down all my accounts to lock me out from the rest of the company. Changed all my passwords.
Right.
And because even in the space of a few minutes, they had the password that I used to authenticate Office 365. So they could use that to get into my normal email accounts, which means they might have access to anything I'd sent previously. They're going to be looking. They're going to have software that's running, looking for passwords, password setups. And we moved so fast, and we think we prevented any of that from happening. But I'm monitoring my credit, my emails. It's like sort of a few extra things I'm doing now every day just to make sure. Because again, somebody was monitoring somebody.
Right.
I don't think it was me. I think it was the business owner on the other side. It was a business broker who was emailing me the agreement to sign.
There's certain people that are targets for the campers to camp out in. They're much easier, but they're using that to then penetrate you and to get to the money.
And they did it. It was good. It looked just like the Microsoft Office 365 sign-in screen. It was, the colors were there, the fonts were there. I mean, I see this 100 times a day. So it's like, look, it's like, I'm very careful because I hate having to retype and retype. Boom. It's like, no, shit. Sorry. That was...
Caught it quick enough. There's no issues. Nothing happened. And you have your protocols to shut it down, which is the most important for any business owner, is to understand what you need to do next, right? If you make a mistake, and that's okay, we learn by our mistakes, but preventing yourself from being shut down or losing a significant amount of money is the most important piece of it.
Yeah, if I had one piece of advice for everybody, would be if you click on an image or a link or a PDF or something and it takes you somewhere you weren't expecting, it's not enough to log out.
Right.
In those few seconds, they could have now installed something on your browser, on your machine. Because once they're linked to you, they have the ability to do it. Even with an image, you're on your phone and you press on it, they can embed code inside a picture on your phone. You click on the photo, you want to take a closer look at it, you can do it. So you need to have, whatever business you're in, you need to have somebody making sure you know how to not just get restarted, but how to shut you down when you need to.
It's time to go back to paper and courier pigeon. Matt Cohen, Two Rivers Title, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Again, I appreciate it. And we could talk stories for days, and we'll definitely continue the conversation. Thank you.
Good seeing you.